So today we are doing a little bit of a channel update type of video where I'm going to be talking about what I'm working on and things that might be coming down the pipeline. Very open just to any sort of feedback or requests. I've gotten this a little bit on my other channel and I might be doing something along those lines, but let's go into it. I have a list of kind of what I'm working on and things that might be coming. So the first is right now, I recently turned 30, and so I'm doing a reading challenge where I'm going to try and read 30 books in 30 days. I've done this sort of thing before. Some of the books are really easy, some of the books are quite challenging, and so I think it's a good mix. I'm hoping this kind of brings me out of a little bit of an intellectual funk I've been in recently. There's something like... So the retention when you do this sort of thing is actually just terrible. I don't think this is the best way to read, but there is something to be said for just going for a pure volume approach. Like, if you read 30 books, and they're all nonfiction, which is generally kind of what I read, although I think 2 of the ones I'm reading are fiction, you might accidentally find a good idea, right? It's just a numbers game, even if your retention's not very good, because there's just so much you're reading. The idea is you are trying to retain the best ideas, and then the other stuff just kind of goes away. I'm still trying to maintain good sleep. In terms of process, one of the things I do when I'm reading all these books in a month is that I read them all concurrently, because I think that sleeping in between chapters of a book is important if the idea is scaffold. So if the ideas build off of each other, generally speaking, sleep is an important aspect of integrating knowledge. And so if you have a book whose ideas build off of each other, you kind of want to sleep in between levels. And so that's how I do this. I've tried cover to cover reading 30 books in 30 days before, and the retention was considerably worse than reading a bunch concurrently. Anyways, so that's thing one. So there's going to be quite a bit of book reviews. I might actually change my book review process, though. Generally, when I review a book, I read back through the whole book on all my annotations, and I don't know if I'm going to do this. I think I'm going to try and get back to my roots in terms of when I felt like when I was really getting a lot of ideas, I wasn't even annotating books, I was just cranking through a lot of them. And so it was more about volume than necessarily about retention. And so I think switching to something that is a combination of a volume approach combined with a lot of writing might be better than like annotating and rereading. And so I might be switching in this way. Second thing I'm working on is I've put together a lot of notes, or I had put together a lot of notes for a fiction book, and I have started writing it. And so I have like the entire plot. I actually have the plot for 3 books, but the like second and third it's like loose. And so I started working on that. It's actually, I've posted the first 3 chapters, the rough drafts, on my blog, keeping in mind that they are rough, but they're up there, and I will continue to try and post those. I'm going to try to get to doing it every Saturday, although for the month of June, don't get your hopes up because I'm doing this reading challenge thing, but I will do a longer video on the book, which is tentatively titled The Pit. To some degree, it addresses something I've discussed on this blog quite a bit in some of my more freeform videos where I talk about economics, where you talk about how consensual exchange does not guarantee fairness. It's just like a prerequisite. And so in the fiction, it's set in a world where it's, I guess it would be kind of sci-fi, where there's a class of people who live in a pit, and they exchange with people from up above resources. And all of this is agreed. There's no use of force whatsoever in terms of coercion. But obviously there's some asymmetries because the people on top have access to much more abundant resources than the people in the pit. That's kind of the premise, but I will get more to that later. Another thing that I've done on this channel quite a bit is talking about mental models. I'm thinking I'm going to do at least 2 more videos of this, but I'm going to try and come back to it because I think that it's really useful. I think the idea of creating a model and then presenting it is actually a really useful for me personally, because what it does is I think it allows me to more dynamically approach problems in a couple of ways. One, just realized that I can apply different models to particular issues and different ways of looking at things. And I think that this adds a lot of flexibility. And two, it kind of creates and makes more nuanced my ideas of the individual models themselves. And so my lenses get better. So to use a bit of a metaphor, it's like having a bunch of different lenses that I can look through, and also improving the lenses by putting them out. Or when you force yourself to learn something to the degree where you feel comfortable explaining it to someone else, you'll generally understand it quite a bit better than if you just like brute force, like keep rereading or review notes or something like this, because there's a lot more like on the line in terms of like, where humans were social creatures. The prospect of potential social humiliation is a very strong motivator. Okay. Another thing I might be working on, which actually won't be on this channel, is I've been considering doing workout tutorials on my other channel. I've gotten a couple of requests for this. I don't quite feel like an expert in some of these like requests that I'm getting, so I try and direct people to other people who I feel have more knowledge, but I might start trying to put out something. We'll see. Also, I don't have a lot of the equipment or the like setting that's super cohesive to this, but I can figure it out if I want to. Another thing is, in terms of, I'm warming up to the idea of actually trying to grow this channel instead of just like kind of using it as a mechanism for developing myself. And to that end, I think an avenue of ingress might be shorts. And so I have to try and think of more shorts ideas. I was doing I did like a couple on thought experiments, but one of the problems with the shorts is fairly obvious, is like there's no room for nuance, and the ideas I like exploring generally require quite a bit of nuance. And so like another thing I was thinking of doing was talking about, I think, difficult topics, but like not necessarily having conclusions or kind of definitive perspectives that I present, but just kind of present why I think that these topics are difficult, because there is nuance. I'm actually going to do a video on that on gun control, because I don't think it's super straightforward, but like obviously you can't put something like this in a short, because there's no room for nuance, unless like you spend a third of the short discussing the lack of nuance. I don't know. A lot of subjects that are the most interesting ones, I'm afraid to do videos on. Fear might not be the right word, but we'll just, because they are interesting because I think it is so easy to make a wrong step in terms of the way you are thinking about it. And that is why I would want to talk about them, because one, I can develop my perspective in like looking into it, but two, it's it's more interesting because the stakes are high, right? To use like, I guess, a sports analogy, it's like nobody cares about the preseason games because there's no stakes, right? And so ideas that are not contentious or difficult to some degree are not interesting to watch, because there's no chance of a misstep, and also whoever's watching these probably also already has a pretty well-formed perspective on it, and so it's perhaps uninteresting for discussion, but talking about stuff that's difficult, more interesting, but like maybe alienates people. I'm not sure. There's not many people to alienate though, because if you're 9 minutes into this video, man, it's a record. So I in terms of like goals and like the way I'm thinking about what I'm doing stuff is, I have a few points that I try and adhere to, and the first is I generally want what I'm putting out to be relatively accessible to the average person. And I have a bit of a background in philosophy, psychology, and economics, but I'm trying not to lean into anything that is too technical in those fields. And so to that end, I kind of want to avoid like weird, difficult discussions that are perhaps not too relevant to the layperson. Although, man, I hate the term layperson. It just sounds so condescending, and it's like, it's really not like what I mean. What I mean is like people who just don't have experience in that field, but I mean, I guess that's what layperson means, but it sounds condescending. So that's thing one is accessibility. Another is, I think a big part of why I started doing this channel originally was actually I was doing mind maps, and I was posting those, and I was just talking about the ideas. And so it was purely for my own personal development and just thinking my way through ideas. And so it would force me to make a mind map and then have a good enough understanding of that so that I wanted to explain that. And so the idea is just pursuing general excellence. And the second point was actually developing my voice, which is something I've completely stopped paying attention to whatsoever. Although to some degree, when I watch these back and I see myself say like or it's like a little cringe, because you want to speak well, and there's multiple tasks going on when you're making a video, and it's actually a bit of an interesting thing. But you have this task where you are trying to, explain something, so you're conceptually unwrapping something, and so you are imagining this person that exists in the abstract who doesn't have an understanding of something, and you are trying to give them an understanding of it, and you cannot read on their reactions at all, which is actually tremendously important for just understanding when someone's getting something and when they're not. And so you have to construct this like theoretical person in your head that you're explaining something to and hoping that it hits. And then simultaneously while you're doing that, so that's the information, that's the substance, you're also interested in the fluff or the stuff of your performance of explaining it, where you are trying to not get lost in some sort of weird tangent, not have sentences that are incoherent, and also not say like or And so this process, I've come to the conclusion that doing these sorts of videos has made it so that I can explain stuff to people in person just like extremely well. Like I can just stream of consciousness go for like I think kind of as long as I want if I wanted to do that. Obviously, when you're interacting with people, that's not how interactions should work. But if I want to explain something, I can. And to that end, this entire practice of making videos, like most of the videos are book reviews, right? But explaining a book and explaining a different concept or telling a story, and like these are all, in terms of the performance, they're all similar tasks where you are stringing together something in a way such that it's coherent, or in the case of a story, it also has to try and be entertaining. And I think that this is still a big part of why I'm interested in doing these, but to some extent, I am becoming more warm to the idea of actually trying to grow the channel, and so I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do that, other than I guess I should really just start getting on the having thumbnails. But and then the third thing, which is kind of the same as general excellence, I have like notes here, but the third thing is process orientation, and this is, I think, a meaningful and important process because it leads to general excellence. These are kind of two different things, but they're really the same thing. And one of these things I might be doing is doing a lot more brainstorms on here, where I do not know exactly where I'm going with an idea, but I think that unpacking it while I'm in this format is more productive than perhaps unpacking it on my own, because of all of the things that are involved. In terms of, and by more productive, I mean, I think I might unpack the idea faster. And then secondly, I am unpacking the idea while simultaneously working on skills, right? In terms of, being able to talk. And like I do these all in one take, which obviously makes for a worse product, but it makes for a sort of thing where I have to be comfortable with making errors. Because if I make an error now, I'm not going to restart. This video is already 14 minutes. It's in it. And so to some degree, the like stakes get higher as the video gets longer, because usually I don't start over when I'm like more than 2 minutes in. And the second aspect of process orientation I want to focus on is consistency. And that is something I am quite bad at. I am very good at completely devoting my attention to something for a short period of time and just like being absolutely relentless, but over a long period of time being consistent, that is a struggle. And so this offers a good opportunity because just the structure of, if I'm trying to release videos, let's say I want to do a book review every Tuesday and a like free-form brainstorm every Thursday or something like this, whatever it is, you get the idea. It can force me to make my practice more consistent. And you know how sometimes there's like metal meshes and then like you have like this foam thing over it and you use this to produce like landscaping stuff, like a rock, where it's not really a rock, it's just this metal wire thing that has... Did I freeze? Okay. It's just this metal wire thing with the covering over it, and it's supposed to like look like a rock. That structure is something I lack. Generally speaking, consistency is a struggle. And so if I can get in a rhythm of being like, well, I have to release a video on this day, then I think that will overall help my process. Maybe I'll even get back into mind maps, although I don't think so. I think the problem is I don't think there's really very good medium for sharing those types of things, but man, I think they're good, so maybe I'll have to have a think on that. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm working on, what's going on in terms of like the immediate pipeline. Once I am done recording this, I'm actually going to record a video for the gun control one, because I already have like a brainstorm thing laid out, and work my way through that. So that'll be coming down the pipeline relatively soon. And then I will try and get another book review done, I think, for Tuesday, although I have the completed books, I just have to review them. And then, kind of go from there. And then, as far as discussion goes, to anyone who's listened to me kind of just rattle off stuff, as far as discussion goes, does anyone have any either suggestions or requests in terms of things that they want covered? I have a wide area of interests, and the thing is like, it doesn't matter, well, to some extent it matters what interests me, but to some extent what matters what interests the viewer. And so if anyone has any sort of requests or things that they would think that I know about that they might be interested in, or just things that they kind of conceptually want to explore, we could do that together. This sort of thing, feel free to put them in the comments, and have a good one.